Welcome back to the podcast. You are tuning in to episode number 302 of Starting the Conversation. I'm your host, Alice Benham, and today I'm going to be discussing the topic of how we make our business models more narrow, more simple, more specific, and in doing so, build a more effective business. This is a topic that I've been thinking about a lot recently. It's come up quite a lot in my conversations with clients. It's the start of a new year, so people are really looking at their business models and working out what they might want to change this year. And it's also been something that I've been thinking about a lot personally. If you tuned into the episode that I released a few weeks ago, I was sharing my intentions for 2025 and really what I want this year to hold in terms of growth for my business. To cut that episode short, if you haven't listened already, really for me what this year is about is doing less in order to do things better. I have a real tendency as a business owner, and I don't feel like I'm the only one here, to say yes to everything and make myself quite busy and get a lot of things happening at once. And whilst in many ways that can be fulfilling and exciting and impactful, I know that I've always got to nudge myself to look through the lens of simplicity and narrowing things fairly often. It's not my natural way of thinking. And so for me this year, I'm really looking at how can I build a business model that's even more specific, even more narrow, even more simple, and in doing so, access a whole load of benefits. When I look back over the last 9 years of my business, I can see myself doing this at various points. I believe our businesses are always evolving, and I don't think it's a one-time thing. Like, congrats, you've built a more simple, narrow business model, you're done. What that looked like for me 2 years ago is different to what that looks like for me now. So if you're in a similar position, or if you resonate with that idea of struggling to know what doing less looks like for you and how to make something simpler, what I'm going to share in today's episode is not just some detail around what that looks like and the benefits of doing that, but I'm also going to be sharing with you 2 frameworks that I use not just in my own business but also with my clients in order to help you make those decisions. It's all well and good us talking about this idea of building a more specific and narrow business model, but I think so often, like many things in business, we get the concept, we get the benefits, but it's the how where things can really start to get sticky. So I'm really hoping that you find value in those 2 frameworks. They're things that I have used countless times over the years, and I always come back to them when I'm thinking about this idea of making things more specific and in doing so, better. Now, if I had to sum up this idea of building a business model that feels more narrow and therefore more effective, what I really feel we're doing here is working out what our version of should looks like in business. Now, I know that word of should can often come with a feeling of, I don't want to think about the shoulds. I don't want to build a business that's built on the shoulds of what other people think I should do, or what my community thinks I should do, or of what my industry thinks I should do. I'm not talking about that kind of should. I'm talking about your own version of should as the business owner. Because here's the thing. So often in business, we look at our businesses and we look at the things that we do and the things that we say yes to through a lens of could. We go, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I've got the expertise for that, or I might have the time for that, or I've got the ability to do that. Yeah, I could do that. And we build these businesses that are really based around what we could do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Often I think in the early days of business, especially, that's the zone that we need to be in. You've got to be experimenting and saying yes to things and just figuring out what feels right and what doesn't. But here's the thing. If we continue to build businesses through that lens of could, what we will then often end up doing is building business models that feel quite complicated, that feel quite clunky, that feel quite overwhelming. And let's just remind ourselves, if it feels that way to us as the business owner, it will feel 10 times that to your community, your audience, to the people that it really matters for. So what I encourage us all to think about is, how do we build business models that have us sitting in our version of should? If you almost think of it as these 2 circles, right? There's this big outer circle of could. All of the things that you could do in your business, all of the, expertise that you've got, all of the ideas that you've got, all of the things that you can do. It's a very big circle, right, with a lot of things in. Well, within that circle is going to be a smaller circle, and that smaller circle is labeled should. That's the things that you actually want to do, the things that actually make most sense for you to do, the things that are actually most aligned with your goals, with your vision, with what's important to you. Your version of should is really where you should be looking to build your business. Because when we are building businesses from a place of should, and again I say our version of should, as opposed to just could, there are so many various benefits. I had to actually stop myself when I was planning this episode because I just kept going with this list of like all of the benefits of not only working out what your version of should looks like, but then actually building a business that kind of fits into that circle. But to just list off a few of the benefits, and these are all things that I have experienced firsthand. I have seen and felt the impact of making a business model that is a bit more narrow, that is a bit more specific. And I've seen it a lot with my clients as well. So to me, one of the big benefits really is that then everything you do in your business is to a higher quality. It's fairly simple, right? The idea that if you're doing less, you can bring more, you can bring better, you can be more focused in the things that you are doing. I was reflecting the other day about when I came into business, I had these two big kind of goals. I wanted to say yes to everything and I wanted to bring my best to everything. And over the last 9 years, I've really learned the hard way that like those two truths and those two goals actually cannot coexist. By saying yes to everything, you will not be bringing your best to everything. So when we do less, we are able to do better. We have a bigger impact, we have a more significant impact, and we're able to really like build our expertise in that specific zone. The second benefit I think of building businesses that feel more simple, feel more specific, is that we build a business that then also feels more sustainable. Again, that idea of saying yes to everything and doing everything that we could do, that often leads us to a place of overwhelm, that might lead us to a place of being close to burnout, but more than anything, it might just end up creating a business that doesn't actually feel right for us. And in doing so, we don't want to be doing it in the long run. I'm all about sustainability in business, not just how do we get results today or next week, but how are we sowing seeds for what we're going to want in 5 to 10 years' time. The third benefit I would say of building a business model like this is that you're going to see more growth. It makes sense when you think about it. If you are really leaning into the things that are the best fit for you, if you're then bringing your best to that, you're then going to be having a bigger impact. People are going to have a better perception of you and what you do. They're going to refer you more. You're going to create better things. Ultimately your business's worth comes down to the quality of what it is that you're creating. And if you're being that bit more specific, you can become so much more specialized and become so much more effective. And in turn, then your business can grow a huge amount as well. I also believe that simplicity is a really big key to growth, that when we're trying to do too much at once, it's really hard to create growth because growth takes focus. When I'm working with a client who's building out a new business, we'll look at yes, you might have these 7 different things that you want to develop over time, but you can't start all 7 things from day one because to grow a business takes intense focus. So when your business model is more simple, when there's less for you to focus on, you can give everything more focus and in turn see more growth. And then the final benefit that I want to list, but like I said, I could really go on here, is that I believe when we build businesses that meet our version of that should rather than just could, it also feels so much more fulfilling for us. Very often when I'm doing this exercise with clients or I'm talking to people about this idea of, what's in your circle of what you could do versus what's in that smaller circle of what you should do, the prompt that I will give them to work out what does or doesn't go in that should kind of circle is, what's the stuff that you enjoy? Very often, the list of things that people have expertise in or areas that they can help other people in is so much bigger than the list of things that they really enjoy. There are definitely things for me that I know I could help people with, that I know I'm good at, but I don't necessarily enjoy them. Maybe I find them stressful, maybe I find them boring, maybe I just don't enjoy it. We deserve to have businesses that feel fulfilling for us, not only because, you're the one putting in all the work, it's got to be worth it for you, but also because when you are feeling more fulfilled, when you're doing tasks that you actually enjoy, it's all cyclical, right? You're going to bring your best and in turn, your business is going to grow. So all of these benefits feed into each other. And I share those just to point out the benefits of a business model, feeling simpler, feeling more narrow, feeling more specific. As I shared at the start, I think as business owners, we do have that tendency to want to say yes and do more and get busy. And I think we've got to learn where that mindset is helpful and then learn where it's not. Because most of the time, if we're looking at improving a business model and creating a more effective business ultimately, we've got to be looking through this lens of, is there opportunity here to make things simpler, more narrow, and in doing so, access all of those benefits that I've just listed. So what I want to share in the rest of this episode is 2 frameworks, 2 kind of mindsets that I come back to time and time again when I'm working through this topic. Whether I'm looking at my own business model or I'm doing this kind of for and with a client, these are 2 frameworks which are super simple. I didn't make them up, I've picked them up over the years, but which I think really help you to make those decisions. Because let's be honest, the concept of making a business model that's more specific, that's more narrow, it sounds good, right? You just heard me list all those benefits. You might be sat there thinking like, yeah, I want to do this. But the reality of it is very different. It's often hard decisions, right? Saying no to things, doing less, working out maybe what you don't want to be doing anymore. It's not always an easy thing to do. I can definitely say that from personal lived experience. Right now I'm in a season of making my business model more narrow, and that's involving some quite hard decisions. And for me, frameworks like the ones that I'm going to share with you today are just a really helpful way to bring a bit more logic into the mix and just to help us really work out what's going to be the right thing for us. So without further ado, the first one that I want to share with you, and you might have heard these before, but I think they're so good because they're so simple, is this idea of equal yeses and equal nos. Years ago in my business, my dad said this quote to me, and it has stuck with me every single season of business that I have been in. Whether it was right at the start when he told me this when I was starting a business, or now as I'm kind of scaling and pivoting through different seasons. He said this thing to me that just has made such an impact, which is this: when you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. Or most of the time, when you are saying yes to something, you are saying no to multiple other things. Now, I have actually researched where that quote's come from, because I'm pretty sure my dad didn't make it up. Although you know what it's like when your parents say something to you and you're like, oh my gosh, you are a philosopher, you made that up. Now that I've Googled, I found that it's used in lots of different settings. I've heard other people talk about it. I'm pretty sure it's attributed to the author Ryan Holiday. So I think he's the first person that kind of spoke about this concept in this way. But if you go back into history, it's actually a concept that's been really widely talked about, because I actually think we can go back to like the initial work around science, right? I think it was Albert Einstein that said that quote of like, every action has an equal opposite reaction. Now, if you have also seen Hamilton the musical like me, every time you hear that, you're just going to think of the rap where it's like, every action has an equal opposite reaction. If you haven't seen Hamilton, you were just graced with my rapping, you're welcome. But every action has an equal opposite reaction. It's the same concept of this idea of when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So what do I mean by this? Well, so often in business, when we're thinking of ideas, or maybe we're given an opportunity, or we're thinking about whether we want to do something, we really fixate on the yes. I.e., what is that thing going to give us that's positive? Maybe if you are being given an opportunity to create something new, we're thinking of, oh my gosh, that new thing, or the impact it's going to have, or the people it's going to help, how exciting I'm going to find it. And what we don't often do is think about the equal side of the no's. Because when you're saying yes to something new, you're also saying no to some other things. For example, you might be saying yes to taking on a new project, but in doing so, you might then be saying no to maybe bringing your best to the other projects that you have. Or you might be saying no to having some more rest or time off in your business. Or you might be saying no to developing that other project or idea that you have that's important to you. Every yes, whilst it has a lot of yeses underneath it, income and impact and fulfillment, is going to have an equal list of no's. And I really believe in business that we should get clearer every time we make a decision on what the no's are. Not to convince ourselves not to make that decision, but to be really honest with ourselves about what decision we are making. I look back in my business journey and I see so many times where I was just overly fixated on the yes, and I kind of got carried away, and then I would do this thing and then go, oh, why was that not a good decision? I felt like it made so much sense at the time. But the truth is, when I made that decision, all I was looking at was the yes. I wasn't looking at the no as well. So this is something I'd encourage you to think about every time that you are making a decision in your business. What am I saying no to by making this decision? And how do those two lists feel next to each other? You might look at a decision and go, yeah, actually, the yeses is worth it. The impact that's going to bring to my business, the income it's going to generate, the way it's going to make me feel, the way it's going to change my business model. Yeah, that's worth it for the no's on the other side. That's great, because then you're making a much more informed, enthusiastic decision about that thing, and you're aware of some of the challenges it might bring. Or maybe you do that exercise and actually it helps you to realize, yeah, maybe that's not right for me. It's so hard in business to make decisions that go against that instinct of, if there's money, take it. If there's opportunity, take it. And actually, I think there's always value in just having a pause moment where we go, okay, I might want that. My gut might be saying it's right. Let's just check in. Let's just look into the detail a bit more. And like I said, it doesn't mean that you then start saying no to everything. It's just making sure that whatever yes or no's you give are really informed. This is an especially helpful thing to think about if you're ever making a really difficult decision. For me, when I decided last year that I was going to stop doing guest episodes on this podcast, the yeses to that decision really had to be clear to me in order for it to feel worth it. Because I was like, well, if I say no to guest episodes, that's saying no to listeners enjoying episodes. That's saying no to growth for the podcast. That's saying no to me meeting new people. The no's of that decision were like really, really big. And so I had to then spend time thinking about the yeses. Well, if I make this decision, what will I be saying yes to? What will that do for me? What will that do for the podcast? What will that allow me to step into? So whatever decision you're making, but especially if it's a difficult one, spend some time thinking about both sides. When you put decisions through this framework, it's amazing how, firing a difficult client or saying no to what seems like a shiny opportunity immediately goes from feeling like, the worst decision ever to like an absolute obvious no-brainer. Here's what I know I want to do. So that's the first framework I want to share with you. The idea that when you say yes to something, you say no to something else. And always thinking about that equal exchange that everything has in our businesses. Because ultimately your time, your energy is not unlimited. So we've got to make sure that where you're putting it is getting the right thing back for you. The second and kind of final framework that I then want to share in this episode, I don't know if I've seen this talked about before, but I'm definitely not going to say that I've made it up because I feel like who knows where it first planted a seed in my mind. But it's this idea of building a one-way door on your business model. This is kind of less a framework and I guess more a question to ask yourself, more a mindset to have when you're looking at your business model. Because what I have noticed over the years is that we have a tendency as business owners to build a one-way door on our business model. Here's what I mean by that. If you think of your business model like a room in a house or maybe a room in a big office block, right? And everything that comes into that room exists in your business model. So maybe a service comes in, a product comes in, a revenue stream comes in, a podcast comes in, right? All of these things that you're saying yes to, you let into that door. There's nothing wrong with that. We've got to say yes to things to grow, right? We've got to have to come up with ideas and bring things to life to grow. But here's where I think we sometimes go wrong. In fact, I'd be confident to say most of us have made this mistake before or are currently making this mistake, is that door on that room is a one-way door. It's a one-way door in that we freely and enthusiastically let things in, but we never let things out. As business owners, I really believe that is our kind of natural way of building a business, is that we think about things in a kind of one-way door. I have seen this happen in my own business model, but with so many of my clients as well, where this thought just pings into my head of like, oh my gosh, the one-way door thing is happening again. We've only ever let things in and we've never let things go. Our natural state, I think, as business owners is that we do, generate ideas. We do innovate. We do pursue things that feel exciting and interesting. And that's great. That, ultimately is what leads to growth. But if we just keep saying yes and we just keep letting things in, there comes a point where that room starts to feel really crowded. And there comes a point where that room is so crowded that nothing is getting the space that it needs. Think of each thing in that room maybe as like an acrobat. Right? An acrobat needs space to do their tricks, to do their things. If you put 30 acrobats in a room that's built for 5, very quickly none of your acrobats are going to be performing very well or even be able to perform at all. It's the same with things in our business model. If we cram too much in, slowly but surely, things will start to be less effective. We will start to feel overwhelmed. We will start to feel unfulfilled. And ultimately our business's growth will be stalled or just not be going in the direction that we want it to. So what we need to think about here is, how do we put an exit door on that room? How do we create an opportunity in our businesses for us to let things go? We are very good, I think, at business owners at saying yes and starting things. I don't think we're always as good at saying no. And the key thing, I think, is retiring things. A question for you as you listen to or watch this episode is, when was the last time you retired something in your business model? i.e., when was the last time you stopped doing something, you let something go? You might have an answer to that and it's really recent, and well done to you, teacher's pet. You win, you did it. But I'm going to bet it might have been a little bit of a while for you. If that's your answer, if you're sat there thinking, oh my gosh, I've not stopped anything in so long, you're not alone. I had an experience just a couple of weeks ago. I was working with a new client and they were explaining to me their business model, and just from an external perspective, I was like, well, you obviously need to stop doing that thing. Like, you just talked me through how everything's performing, and like that thing is like a rotten apple. Like, that is just seems to be causing you so much stress. It doesn't seem to be bringing much back to you. It doesn't really seem to be something that you want to be doing. Like, you just need to get rid of it. And I get that because I'm an external perspective, it's easier to see that, but it was amazing how quickly they were like, oh yeah, that is what I need to do. And obviously with that bit of external encouragement, made that decision, and such an immediate positive impact was had. When we retire things, what we're doing is we're making space for everything else to perform better. We're making space for new things to come in, but to come in with the capacity from our side to actually then grow them. I can actually give a really practical example of this, which is that across the whole of last year in 2024, I was slowly retiring parts of my business model. I had a lot of live programs and courses. Well, not a lot, that makes it sound like there were loads. It was maybe like a handful, 3 to 4 that I had delivered over the years. And I knew that there was something brewing in terms of a new idea in my business. I didn't know at the time that it was On It, which is my group program that's lasting for the whole of this year that I did a launch debrief of last week. But I knew that something was coming, and I knew that I didn't have any space in my room for that thing. I looked around my room and I was like, ooh, we're a bit crowded in here. No one's currently actually got that much room. So I definitely don't have any room to get anything else into this. So then I had to go, right, how do I make space? And I begun the process of making a lot of my live programs and courses pre-recorded, and just started to make a bit of room in my business model. That then meant that when I had the idea for On It, I had the capacity. I could look in this room, in this business model of mine, and go, yeah, there's space for this. I'm going to be able to really bring my best to this. And so that's what this looks like, right? It's looking at parts of your business model and going, that may have served me to get to here, but is that going to serve me to get to there? Parts of your business model should not exist purely because of legacy. Like those old friendships that you still have from school, but they're not really working for you, but you kind of keep them around because it's like, oh, but we've been friends for so long. Let's not do that with parts of our business model, right? Your business does not reward you for holding on to things longer than you should. I can totally appreciate we have emotional connection to them. Maybe we've got a bit of people pleasing going on. Maybe we're worried about what's going to happen if we say no to it. But let's remember my previous framework, right? When you say no to something, you're going to say yes to a whole load of other things. Every time I've seen a client retire a part of their business model and stop doing something, it has opened up so much capacity and opportunity for new things. And so that is the second kind of mindset I want to share with you today, is this idea of creating a two-way door on your business model. Asking yourself, not when was the last time I created something new and said yes to something, but when was the last time I retired something, stopped doing something, or said no? We kind of need to think about those two lists in equal measure, because unless you're going to continue just hiring team to deliver things in your business, ultimately if a lot of your business is run by you, we're working with a limited capacity. We've got limited resource there. So you cannot just keep cramming things into this room and hope it's going to be okay. As I said, there comes a point where the room is so crammed that things stop performing, and then so many other things in our business start to fall out of alignment. So my challenge for you off the back of this episode is to think about what it could look like for you to have a more narrow, a more specific, and a more simple business model. Maybe as I've been talking you through these ideas, you've had some clarity already of, oh, maybe I need to stop doing that thing. Or maybe for me, this could look like changing that. It doesn't have to be big dramatic changes. I sometimes like to think about this even in the tiny details, like where can I be using less systems? Where can I be doing less marketing channels? Where can I just be, lessening my role as the business owner? Like simplification and doing less in any area is going to give you those benefits that I talked about earlier, where we're performing to a higher quality, where things feel more sustainable, where we feel more fulfilled, and when ultimately then our business can experience more growth. So that's your challenge off of this episode. Where could you go and make a decision that would give you more ease, give you more simplicity, and build a business that is more narrow, and in doing so, so much more effective? If you don't know where to begin, I would encourage you, start with a little business model audit. Look at every single offering within your business model, every service, every product, and question it. What's the impact of it? What revenue does it bring to my business? How do I feel about delivering it and selling it? And in conclusion from that, okay, what is that offer bringing to the table? How is that performing for me? Very quickly, you'll start to get clarity on where you want to be doing more and perhaps which areas of your business model you might want to look at doing less in or even retiring and stopping doing. I am not to blame for any big drastic decisions you make in your business model off the back of this episode, but I do encourage you to ask yourself those questions. Who knows? Maybe you've listened to this episode and you've gone, actually, I think my business model's good. That's just helped me to, affirm that I'm doing the right stuff for me. That's great. But like I said, for most of us business owners, this invitation is often long overdue to think about what might it look like to do less, and in doing so, do better. I really hope that you have found this episode valuable. As a reminder, if you haven't already, come over to my YouTube channel. You can come and watch these episodes if you want to see me waving my hands around and staring off into the distance as I'm recording. And you can also keep an eye out for some vlogs that are coming very soon. This year, I'm going to be bringing you behind the scenes of my business. I'm going to share with you the behind the scenes of hosting events, hosting retreats, and really kind of break down the day-to-day of what it looks like to do some of the different things that I do. Some of it might be quite boring, but hopefully that just reminds you that you're not alone if parts of your business feel a bit boring. But I'm hoping to bring you behind the scenes on the stuff that's most interesting. So head to the link in the show notes to come over to YouTube to come and subscribe. Or if you're watching on YouTube already, please do subscribe so that you don't miss out on those things to come. But that is it for another episode. I will be back with another episode next Tuesday. So until then, I'm cheering you on and I challenge you to go and make your business model more simple. You've got this.